All right, welcome to video 3 of our FlatRedBall beginner top-down 2D twin stick shooter tutorial. And in this video, we are going to work on updating our player art so that it's a spaceship and not a little dude. And we might even get our hands dirty with the code here. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, if you remember where we left off, we had this little guy and we want to replace him with a spaceship. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the game and we'll get started on that swap. So I guess the first thing to do is obtain some spaceship art. And so for this tutorial series, we're going to use the website opengameart.org, which has a large collection of especially 2D free, royalty-free artwork to use. And if you use it, you should be sure to credit the creators, which you can find info about the attribution on each of the asset packs that you find here. Anyhow, this is from like an old game that eventually the creators put the art up. I think they put all the source code out for free. I'm not super familiar with it, but we're going to use this for the art in our game, at least to begin with. So you can go ahead and click the little download button, and then we can unzip it. And so I'm going to hit extract all, and then we'll have a folder full of artwork from this game Tyrion. And in here there are lots of tile sheets, and we're going to scroll to the bottom, or at least it's the bottom for me, bottom-ish, and we're looking for they thought it was the bottom. We're looking for a PNG file that has a bunch of spaceships on it. Okay, so I guess it technically doesn't matter, but I'm gonna pick this one. I think this is like the player character from the game, but like I said, it doesn't super matter. But I would pick something that's like reasonably similarly sized, so that your game works similar to how the one we build in the tutorial is gonna be. So anyway, this one is called Tyrion.shp.007D3C.png. I don't know what all that mumbo jumbo is about. We're going to have to rename this anyhow because when we try to drag it into FlatRedBall, it doesn't like having like periods in the file names. So I'm going to rename this like Tyrion ship, and I'm going to open it in an image editing program because you can see that it's got like this green background to it, and we need it to be transparent. So I'm going to use an app called paint.net because it's just like, I don't know, it's free and uncomplicated. You can use whichever image editing app you understand how to use. I would just say if you try to get paint.net, just there's like some evil ads on this that look like the download button. I think they're not coming through because of ad blocker, but you would want to click this and then follow instructions. Anyway, once you have your image editing software of choice, we can open this up, and we're going to get rid of this little background. And I'm going to do a pretty lazy job because I really only care about like one of these ships right now. At least I just want like this middle guy. And so my magic wand just pretty much worked on like 90% of this, but there's some of these like little backgrounds in here you would want to delete if you were going to use the rest of this. Maybe one day I'll fix it, but for now this is good. So then now that the background's gone and we just have transparent background, I'm going to hit Control S to save this thing. Just go with the defaults. And I did rename it, and we could always download it again if we broke something or whatever. But it is important that you rename it because, like I said, FlatRedBall is not going to like to have all these periods in the file names. I learned this the hard way. So anyway, I've gotten rid of the background. I've deleted the periods out of the file name, and now I'm going to drag it into FlatRedBall into our project here. And the spot that I'm going to put art for our project is going to be in this global content files that's at the bottom of this Explorer window here on the left side. So basically anything in the global content files folder can be used in any of our entities or screens. So it's kind of like a catch-all that's convenient to use. It actually has implications about loading time that are relevant if you're like advanced, but for us this is good. In fact, it's good for everybody. I don't know. You have to get into the Discord and get the nitty gritty from the technical folks if you want a accurate, precise answer there. So I dragged my art into this thing, and now I need to get the art. It's going to live in this global content folder. So if I right click on it and I hit view in Explorer, you can see it is in our project folder. And then there's this folder called global content files, and it is in fact in there. That's a handy shortcut, by the way. If you right click and you hit view and explore, it's a quick way to find stuff where it lives in your file system. So it is there, but we need like a reference to it in our player entity. So here's a spot where you could accidentally maybe get confused about the difference between the instance of the player entity and the actual definition of the player entity. So instances live in the screens. I'm just going to collapse that screens folder to make sure I don't mess anything up. And I'm going to drag the Tyrian ship PNG file over the sprite instance of my player, because my goal is to change the player's sprite so that it looks like that ship. If you don't see the sprite instance, you gotta expand objects. So entities are built up of different objects, and one of them that's in our default player for the top-down game type is a sprite instance. And so I guess you can, just to clarify a little, this is a texture. This PNG file is a texture. It's kind of like the actual artwork, and you can think of a sprite almost like a picture frame. So if this is the artwork that goes in the picture frame, we need to drag it over there. And the first thing that's going to do is like make a reference to that file inside of our player entity. And so now that it's there, we're going to try this one more time. We're going to drag that new reference that's in the player entities files section onto the sprite instance. And now you can see what that did. If I select the sprite instance, you can see that its texture is now pointing to that Tyrian ship. And if I were to click on that Tyrian ship thing, you can see it is actually referencing the one in global content. So it's not like there's like two of them now. It's just kind of a reference. And so now that that's done, we have to kind of also delete all of the old little person walking around from the RPG game. So that is going to involve a couple of steps. So first, we're going to delete this .achx file. That is an animation chain file, and it contains like all of the animations for that little character that was walking around. So we're going to delete that. We don't need it. We're not going to use it at all in this project. So hit delete, yes, I want to remove that. And it's going to say, okay, well, we removed it from the entity. What do you want to do with the files? And since we're never going to use it, we can delete the files too. So we're going to delete the source files as well as remove it from the entity. So that's gone forever now. The next step is um, we're going to click on our player entity here, and you're going to notice over here on the right by default there's this thing called entity input movement, and it has some information about animation. Now this is kind of hard to see with this current window layout, so I'm going to actually right click on this. I'm going to hit move to, and I'm going to move it to the bottom tab. So now it lives down here, and I can kind of like extend this up a little bit, and it's just going to make it easier to see what's going on. So the entity input movement is something you get when you use the new game wizard way back when we first started our project, and we chose top down. And this is like how we could fine tune our player movement and things like that, which we'll get to eventually. But for now, we want to get rid of the animations that are referencing that other character, which he had like an idle and a walk animation. So we deleted the like source art for it, but we gotta also delete the like animation data in this kind of like state machine thing here. So we're gonna go ahead and delete these rows. These are rows, and you can delete them by clicking this X. So I'm on the entity input movement tab for my player entity, and I'm gonna just clear out that idle animation row. I'm going to clear out that walk animation because spaceships don't walk. This is a cool thing about making a space game, is it's pretty easy to animate because the ship can just like slide around. That's a perk. And so now that that's gone, there's one last, I think, spot we have to clear out, an old reference to that old player and its animations. If we go back to our sprite instance of the player entity, there is down here in this like animation section of the variables tab here, we are going to just get rid of this current chain name because it's referencing idle as well. So I'm just going to hit backspace to get rid of that and click off of it and make sure it stays gone. And now that it's all gone, I think we can start telling it to use our ship. So I guess we already got the texture plugged in there when we dragged this onto our sprite. That just filled this in. But remember, this like artwork has like a million images on it, and we have to kind of like specify where on this big tile sheet we want to use for our spaceship. And if you can like click and drag with the middle mouse button or the mouse wheel and pan around on this just like it was tiled, and then use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Anyhow, I want to adjust these little handles to narrow down what we're picking, so then I can click and drag in the middle of this white square, and I'm going to try and make this thing my player. But you can see it doesn't fit neatly on these tiles. Just whoever made this art for the little spaceships, they didn't make it so that it fits on this like 16 by 16 tiles. So what we're going to do is uncheck snapping, and now the kind of like tile grid thing is gone. The tile grid thing can be pretty useful if your artwork is aligned to a particular grid, but this isn't. And I want to just like resize this so that it's like perfectly mapped to the boundaries of this spaceship. We don't want any extra padding in there, or it can have unintended consequences like visual artifacts when we start running the game. All right, so now that I've got it like selected perfectly here, I'm just going to go down and hit OK. Okay, so if I did it right and effectively did get rid of all of the old references to the old art and plugged in the new texture for our sprite that's on our player and mapped it so that it's pointing to the right section of that art asset that contains the image we want to use, and I run the game, hopefully, knock on wood, we will see a spaceship. Hey, check it out. Now, the problem is that the spaceship is always pointed forward or up. And that would work fine if we were doing like kind of like a scrolling shooter where you're like always pointed the same direction, like Space Invaders or something. But in our game, we want to be able to like turn in any direction and go down. I have to kind of resize my window again to fit better. But anyway, you get the idea. We want to be able to like rotate the player so that they're facing the direction they're going. Because our world is bigger than one screen, basically. All right, so I'm going to stop the game. And if we want to make the player rotate like that, it's actually going to involve some code. This video has already gone like 16 minutes, so I think I'm actually going to save the code part for another video, just in the interest of keeping things a little shorter. So join us next time to see how to add functionality to your game in FlatRedBall.